I finally got back into my WordPress account. I don't want to waste too much time on the subject of my phone, so to put it briefly, the day after I was bailed out of jail, my phone completely stopped working. I spent 2 days troubleshooting, Googling, and watching DIY YouTube videos to fix my phone, but to no avail. It was at the end of its life, and I accepted that. In that process, though, I lost access to my Google accounts and phone numbers, so anything set with two-step verification was now impossible for me to access entrance to. I finally decided I needed a week break from trying to figure that shit out for my own mental health's sake, so I did exactly that, even though I took more than a week of a break and I needed it. But I did not sit stagnant. During that time, I took that time to be productive and to start getting my shit together. I accomplished a lot. My last blog entry here was the morning of my court date. So let me give you a short history of what brought me to this court date as quickly as possible. You see, I'm not exactly the bad girl that some may think I am. Yes, I battled an opiate addiction for over a decade, but that was the result of some irresponsible prescription writing and pain contract from my family physician due to my osteoarthritis. I went from never touching a drug in my life to all of a sudden at 26 years old having a prescription of 150 hydrocodone 10s in my possession a month, thanks to my doctor's recommendation and lack of consultation explaining the addiction risks and potential hell they'd cause me in the future. I can't tell you how much they felt like a miracle drug to me as a single mom of 2 toddlers and a new baby. I was able to clean the house, garden, and play with my babies without an ounce of pain or discomfort, and my newfound energy was so greatly appreciated. I felt on top of the world. So when I was abruptly cut off of them and felt withdrawals for the first time, I seriously felt like I wouldn't survive through it. That was when my youngest daughter's dad had said, "Hey, I know someone that sells them. You could buy some from her." That sentence changed me for the rest of my life. Anyways, from then on, my habit would gradually increase, and the next and last 2 guys I was in a relationship with became more toxic and more abusive, and my self-esteem disintegrated into nothing. My last relationship destroyed me on a level a regular person wouldn't be able to even begin to imagine. I was abused in every way you could possibly imagine, manipulated constantly, and forced to do things I never would have done in a million years had it not been for him. I would put up a fight, but it would always end up with him hitting me, choking me, throwing me to the ground, etc., until I did what he said. My boundaries were violated so much that I began losing who I was and had known myself to be all my life. In January 2019, I had been awake for 4 days because he would not let me sleep until he was satisfied with the outcome of whatever task he had decided needed to be done. I literally begged and pleaded with him to please let me just sleep a little bit, which he finally agreed to. I was waiting to rinse the hair dye out of my hair so I could go to bed when he got a phone call, and next thing I heard was him as he entered the room I was in saying, "Yeah, I'll have Mel bring me over right now." I just broke down crying. I was too tired to fight. I was too sore, too bruised, and could hardly swallow food from my throat hurting so badly from how many times daily he would grab me by my throat and choke me. So with hair dye still in my hair, I set off to drive him to where he needed to go. And if you're wondering why I didn't let him take my car, let's put it this way. At this time in my life, I was being randomly pulled over a lot because my car was seen at different businesses stealing items. I later found out he was stealing my car whenever I fell asleep and committing crimes in it. So, anyways, back to the night in January 2019, I arrived where I needed to drop him off. His 16-year-old sister was there, and he advised her to ride with me back home to make sure I made it there safely because I was looking rough. Well, on the way home, I started hallucinating from sleep deprivation and thought I saw a truck in my lane approaching to hit me head on. So I swerved and ended up hitting a van and landing in someone's yard. I was arrested for a DUI, which was dropped to reckless endangerment because his sister was a minor in my car. I was sentenced to a weekly community court and probation, etc., but my boyfriend at the time was all about himself and would cause me to miss things, resulting in warrants, and he would then use my warrants and fear of jail over my head to make me do whatever he wanted me to do. At this point, we had been together 7 months, and in that 7 months, he stripped me of everything I ever was or believed in, and I became a hopeless, empty shell of a person, full of fear, anxiety, pain, and most of all, I felt worthless. I was so afraid of him and scared he would hurt me in front of my kids that I kept them at my parents' because I knew I wasn't strong enough to get away from him, and he often threatened to kill me if I left him, and that made me feel stuck. And so I did what I knew would keep my baby safe by keeping him at my parents'. That month, I really realized that I had a really fucking bad problem that was out of control. And I had my babies officially go stay with their dad. I lost our home and began living in my car and out of hotels until the morning my boyfriend beat me so bad that people could hear it from the other rooms of the hotel and call the police, and he was arrested and spent the next year in prison. He's back in prison again, but that's another story for another day. Back to me living in my car and him in prison. That was the first time I felt safe to reach out for help, and I did, and went to treatment. Graduated, became president of my sober living house, got my car back, was working and seeing my kids, and stayed clean for 10 months, but relapsed. My boyfriend was released from prison and again started fucking off probation until warrants were issued for me again. He went to prison again after strangling me and beating me, and I continued to use. Now lower than ever before by far. I was arrested 2 more times on my warrants, never because I was breaking the law, only because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But ultimately it was my fault for having warrants to begin with. The past 2 years have been my darkest, and hope had completely abandoned me. And I completely gave up on myself and had a couple overdoses and a suicide attempt. But recently, when I was arrested and the judge refused my release, it forced me to finally sober up and clear my head for the first time in a long time, and it saddens me to see how low I let myself fall in life and how alone and isolated I've become, and the horrible and abusive treatment I've allowed in my life from others, but most of all from myself. But let's now focus on my accomplishments the past few weeks. Well, for one, I gained entry to my blog here, which will be a staple in my mental wellness and clarity. I also got my license back in April. My court date was continued for this month to give me a chance to prove my seriousness in getting my shit together. I actually showed up for my meeting with my attorney, which I normally would have blown off in the past. I have checked in with probation as scheduled both times so far, and the biggest accomplishment, ready for this, is that I am officially in intensive outpatient and just got approved funding for sober living at an Oxford house. As a side note, I would like to add that my abusive ex was released from prison again and out for over a year, and I stood firm that him and I were over, and I didn't go back to him again. Him and I have been broke up about 2.5 years now. I have a lot of trauma due to him that I'm finally working through, so I'll probably be writing more in the future about that.